What's up, Buffalo Bills fans? I really haven't liked the energy I've been bringing in my last few videos, unfortunately. I don't think the news has been conducive with having a lot of energy. As per going through a Bills season, it's rather taxing and draining, um, all we know, really, rather than fulfilling and rewarding. But hey, we choose it, right? But I wanted to do a coaching search video. I thought it was important. And probably the last time I'll address the whole Marrone departure, the ugly, very ugly turn that it's taken in terms of the reporting, the stories that have trickled out or just been thrown out about his dealings or his demeanor or his actions or the way he treated people at one Bill's Drive and in other stops along the way. Painted in some circles as a good football mind, as good a coach as you'll find out in the open market, and others as a shameless opportunist who just views his stops along the way as stepping stones, looks for prime opportunities to where he can exploit and finds ways to exercise them. Um, it's unfortunate that the Bills and even Syracuse fell victim to this. Um, Lots of red flags. And there's tons of documented material out there, whether it's recorded interviews or print media. Um, if you guys listen to WGR, Syracuse Democrat, I think it's the Chronicle or something like that. It document Brent Axe Media on Twitter. He had a article about Marrone being thin-skinned. Did an interview recently on WGR. Um, Several other instances. An ex-assistant coach calling him out. Players not being very direct, but definitely you could hear the tone and the and their voice was definitely not in favor of what he did. Uh, and for me, it really just boggles my mind that Russ Brandon would continue to get up there in such public venues and forums, knowing, because he had to have known. I'm sorry, ignorance is no excuse that this guy was conducting himself this way and championing this guy he was with a culture change. I know I've addressed this in my prior video, but the fact that he lauded this guy as a culture changer and as an accountability figure and a guy who's the level of impact. I mean, all these words that when Russ talks, he uses all these corporate catchphrases and this jargon that he uses, like when he refers to tickets as inventory. It's just very. It just doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth. It's like, dude, you're not at a board meeting. You're not talking to shareholders. You're talking to the fans. But it just it's just not a look. It's not a good look for him. It really isn't. And I hope the Pagulas, going through this process, which this time, and I know the Bills, the Bills can't win. You look on social media, particularly Twitter, they're getting, poked fun at for interviewing so many candidates. Well, maybe this time they're actually doing an exhaustive, extensive, thorough, I don't know how exhilarating search it is, but still, instead of going to a hotel in Glendale or Phoenix, um, um, wherever in Arizona, and interviewing a handful of candidates in the same hotel. And apparently, from the Manish Mehta article in the news, and that was another scathing article with Marrone, the grudges, the petulant behavior, and we've seen it. We've seen it. We saw it. However, indirectly with his handlings of players. Players that were jettisoned, players that were just held null and void, probably due to a grudge or just some type of weird, you know, personality quirk that he took umbrage with. This is toxic. It's toxic. We all bash EJ and we say, well, how could a young quarterback, This guy was supposed to instill confidence in a young quarterback, was supposed to educate and coach and teach and develop, supposed to implement a maturation process for for EJ. The thing that was his baby, has been quoted on the offensive line, and you've heard how much he worked with the offensive line, how porous it's become. What does that say? Now all this stuff about how he held Hackett back. I'm 50-50 with that, because if I'm Hackett, I'm a grown man too. And I say, look, you know what? I'm putting my name on this offense. If you want me to call the plays, just call me the play caller. Don't call me the offensive coordinator and then go out and just call the plays that you want, that you've drawn up, because I look like shit. And I'm not going to get another crack at this, because this is bad. So, I don't know. There's equal levels of culpability there. I would, let me do the job, or you step out and say you're doing it, because otherwise, don't hide behind me. And I feel that's what he was doing. I honestly feel that's what he was doing, because he didn't know certain players weren't on the field. We all know that in certain key situations throughout a game. But back to the Manish Mehta article, saying the interview lasted days. And then you go back to his intro press conference, sitting there up there kind of bloviating about how long and thorough the process was, because he was sitting there making sure every little whim and every little minutia point was to his liking. And you got Brandon up there with his plastic smile saying, "Oh my God, this guy, we knew who we wanted with him, and this and that." The thing with Brandon is that was his last thing he had in the organization. That was his last thing, the last piece that, in his time as caretaker, was able to imprint on the Bills, and it's gone. It left. And since, even during, he was clueless as to what was going on. Clueless. I hope the Pagulas, like I stated before, have looked at this and just said, my God, this guy busy walking around with his head up his own ass. Totally bamboozled by this dude. Meanwhile, you see things written where this guy was just a phony. And I'm not saying what he did, people will say, his defenders will say, well, he basically, exercised what was in his contract, and he's just looking out for. Well, now the issue with that is, if and when, and it seems like, he hasn't been hired yet, he's got to get up in front of a team now and sell himself. Oh yeah, forget about what I did, my last stop, because here it's going to be different, accountability. You know all the rhetorical BS he would spew. My way or the highway type of mentality. Players talk, just like the media talks, just like coaches talk, just like agents talk. Players talk too. What do you think they're gonna say? Don't listen to that guy's bullshit. He's I don't think I don't think you want him leading the way, because he looks like a chump. He looks like a chump. He looks like a guy who copped out. I'm not sad he's gone. Trust me, I'm happy. I'm like, oh, now they can get a guy who actually has, a modern day football mind, a guy who wants to be a little more attacking. And I know he probably put a lot of things in the holster to play it ultra safe, so would play to the strengths of the team as currently constructed. But I think that's who Marrone really is. That even if you look back at Syracuse, it was only until early on in their last year did they start running that, what they call that NASCAR offense, where they were just really, really fast and sped everything up. I think who Marrone is this plodding, methodical, field position defense, turnovers, run the football, control the clock, time of possession coach. That's who I think he is. That's where he comes from. And as it pertains to the staff, I think he controlled the offense with a very heavy hand and didn't care about the defense. You look at his hires, you look at the fact he doesn't know certain players are on the field. You look at the special teams where he had his friend in place, and that's not uncommon. And the special teams was much improved this year. But I really don't want anybody with any Marrone pre-existing ties being retained on the new staff. I really don't, irregardless of who the new head coach is. The only, I mean, as far as Schwartz goes, he's still under contract into 16, which is good. Um, you have the strength staff. I like them. Bills have only had, I think, 14 players on IR in the last 2 years. That's great. That is really, really good comparatively to other teams. If you go look at other teams and compare, it's like you see 20 on the Giants. I know there was like 20. And other teams, 15, just 1 year. Bills have had 14 in 2 years combined. That's pretty good. I think overall they fielded a pretty healthy squad these last 2 years. But, offensively or defensively, I know a lot of people are kind of back and forth. I think a lot of us are of the opinion we're either in the camp of bringing an offensive coach, keep Schwartz as a defensive coordinator, or promote Schwartz and bring in a new offensive staff and coordinator. Me, I'm of the opinion I want Schwartz to stay where he is. I want a new face in terms of the franchise, a head coach. I'm in favor of Reich. I mean, for obvious reasons. I think he's, the history, yes. You look at his pedigree in terms of where he's been coaching wise. He's been around really good quarterbacks, good players. You hear about what a genuinely good guy he is. He's from the East Coast, probably tons of Western New York ties. So he really legitimately has those links up there as opposed to like Marrone up there, lip service, all the stuff. It just really looks badly on him and Brandon because it seems like Brandon was the only one speaking out for this guy. I mean, in pretty public, very public way, I should say. See it in the locker room, championing him after the win in Detroit when they played the Jets there because of the storm. You saw it at the end of the season. You listened to it on the radio. It was just, and now you hear all these things. It's just like, bro, it just seems like you allowed it to go on. You just let it go on. And that's it. I mean, wherever he ends up, I mean, I'll root against him. I'm a Bills fan. I'll always, I mean, I won't really care where he ends up. Would I like to see him ends up with the Jets? Yeah, because I think it'll be a absolute shit show here. The way you hear about him, like, I mean, I haven't even gone into some of the stuff about, you read this stuff about how much he cared about what people were saying and in terms of the media and the print media and the, the radio. This guy was fanatical about this stuff. Made sure he had people telling him these things and was bitter about it. And in looking back at the way he was acting during the press conferences and stuff, all year, it was weird. Like I remember the little blow up he had at the first training camp. Remember the first training camp he had a little blow up with war about Mario Williams' health. I mean, yeah, the NFL media wants to know why your $100 million defensive end is. What's wrong with his hip? Is he hurt? Is he good? I mean, you're just kind of sides. And he just lost it. He lost it. And then it just, little things, comes out and apologizes the next day about it. And it just, then it was the injury. And then he didn't want to field questions about the injuries. And then something changed. It just, Ralph died, and I think once Ralph died, the the timer in his head went into speed up mode. Like, okay, this team's going to have a new owner, and they're going to have a new owner relatively soon. So here I go in terms of my opportunity to make the best of this, whatever this is, and get out. And I would say that obviously started, was it February, during the owners' meetings? Was it either in February or March of last year? And then if you look at the timeline, the Pegula's first game owning the team was the Patriots. And when did Marrone make the quarterback switch? The week before. So I think he fully, and remember Schefter. I remember Schefter, and I've stated this on many videos. He was the first guy. He's like, look for Marrone to go to Orton. Look for the, not Marrone, look for the Bills to turn to Kyle Orton the second EJ slips. And if you look back at that and you start reading the tea leaves and playing connect the dots, this was a systematic plan he had diabolically had mapped out in his head. The second this young kid gives me any sign of duress, I'm yanking him. Had nothing to do with a long-term vision or a development of a program or development of a young quarterback. None of that. Had nothing to do with it. All had to do with him getting himself as much value as he could on the open market this offseason. That's all this season was about. So all this culture change that might have, Brandon and them were selling about this green. Who thinks about the green? Who's thinking about the Green Bay game now? I mean, it was bad enough it was done and over with after the Raider loss, but now it's like that Green Bay win never happened. It's gone. Culture change. It's gone. 9-7 season. So what? So what? It's a joke. I mean, and you start, again, like I said, you start connecting dots and you just like, my God, this guy just really, most of the time, had one foot out the door, the other on a banana peel. He was ready to go. And it just is just, wow. And I'm done talking about it. Thanks for letting me get it all off my chest. The guys, girls, Bills fans who view my videos, I really appreciate it. As I think there's a loyalty we have in terms of us as fans, and whether we agree or disagree, whether you agree with me or disagree with me or some of my points and my comments or things I say. I appreciate whatever feedback you give, or whether, again, like I always say, positive, negative. Still, I appreciate you just watching and viewing and taking your time out to do that. But on to the future, getting a guy who is him, who's not trying to portray something he's not, the best possible coach. Everybody's on the thing, whether it's an offensive or defensive, a guy with experience, without experience, I don't care. Get the best possible coach. I want a guy, my preference, I want a guy who's younger, who's innovative, who's willing to take risks. And that, to me, says, I'm here and I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity because I don't care about another opportunity. This is what I care about, not giving it lip service like we've seen in the past, where it was all about what was coming as opposed to what was going on. And that really, really is important. And I think that the Pegulas are out with Whaley trying to ascertain that as much as possible. And the fact that they're taking so much time, flying from California to the Midwest, back to the Rust Belt, waiting to interview Pep Hamilton after Sunday's game in New England, going to Cincinnati to interview Hugh Jackson, spending that whole week in California with Quinn, with Bevel, with Wright, with Shanahan, all these guys. They were really trying to, today was with Shermer. That's exhaustive, and that's what's right. I don't care about the time frame. I don't care about the timetable. Get it right. Get a guy in here who wants to own this and wants to put his face on it and say, look, I'm about just not the present, the now, but I'm also about a better future. I'm not about with this team, not about being just no credibility. I'm sorry I keep going about the guy. I can't believe something we're so passionate about. He spit on it. How does it make us feel, Bills fans, that he basically took the logo, the organization, a team. He just went into the bathroom at one Bills drive, wiped his ass, spit on it, threw it in a toilet, and flushed it. That's what he did. And I mean, for me, I could never be forgiven for that. I could never look back on any time or anything or any game during his tenure with a good feeling. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Completely soured to anything Brandon ever brings to the table ever again. Totally untrustworthy. So I really hope, and everything I've heard about the Pagulas, listening to Paul Hamilton, who covers the Sabres, that they're good people, they support their people, and he was very scathing in his criticism of Marrone, saying that he was stupid, that he was arrogant, and it doesn't shock him in the least that he did this. It doesn't shock him at all. But this new coach, there's Greg Roman, his name's was thrown out there. A lot of crazy stuff too with the Shanahan's connection. I just don't see that happening. I'm not into this whole football czar thing. I think if it is, it's more for the Bagulas, just in terms of having a real process around the league, how things work, not a guy who's going to try to get his friends in the door, because that's what happens with these jobs. You get a bunch of old men who don't have any skin in the game anymore. They're just worried about going to play golf and picking up a fat check and maybe getting on the phone or a conference call or whatever, doing the occasional press conference. But at the end of the day, what are they really doing except collecting a check? I mean, I've stated this in my last video. I just don't see the true value in that. You have to learn a league. You have to go out there and do the legwork yourself. And however that happens, it happens. And I'm really glad the Pagulas are doing it. They're getting the full-on experience. And I can understand your reports. Well, they just bought the team. It's a huge investment. It's a new thing. They didn't see this. They planned on it happening, but it happened. And I think from every Bills fan I talk to that I personally know, we're all glad that it did. I don't know any Bills fan who's upset that Marrone's gone. And as thin-skinned as he is, and as sensitive as he is, I would say he's sensitive. He's a big, sensitive dope, I think. He reeks of a guy who wasn't hugged a lot as a kid, because he asks a lot. He seems like a guy who asks a lot of people that he's not willing to give himself, like accountability and respect and discipline. He reeks of a guy who doesn't ask for what he gives. Or I should say, give what he asks for. That's a better way to put it. But let me hear, Bills fans. Let me know what you like, your ideas, who you think is a good coach. Throw names out there. Be fun. Be creative. I mean, there's a lot of guys, the college game. I haven't really heard too many interviews for college coaches, whether it be Bryles or Helfrich. But it's nice to know that maybe, just maybe, that those guys could potentially be possibilities at some point, in terms of the Pagulas having the money to spend, willing to spend on a coach. And I think you've seen that in this interview. Guys aren't turning down interviews with the Bills. Candidates are interviewing, as in the past. We remember they weren't interviewing at all. Nobody was. And maybe this isn't there's not a lot of star power, is what I'm trying to say, in this crop of head coaching candidates. But I don't need that. I really don't. I just need, give me an old-fashioned grunt who just wants to put his nose to the grindstone, work, get that team better, get that offense better, and just be, I think being a good person is important, because if you're a piece of shit and a scumbag, people they're not gonna respect you. They're not. Like, if I got on here and made my videos and I would just berate anybody who disagreed with me, or come on after victories and pound my chest and talk shit about the other team and not, just basically just be a homer fan and disrespectful. That's not respectful. That's not sports to me. I mean, it's sports to me in a sense that sometimes there's a little bit of trash talk and a little bit of banter that goes on. That's just the way of it. But to me, there's a limit. There's a limit. And you see a lot of times that it goes way, way, way too far with people. I mean, you hear, the league and society in all sports is proliferated with beatings and stuff, stabbings that happen outside of these venues and the stadiums. It's crazy. It's crazy. But all right, Bills fans, you have a good week. Good New Year's to you. I think it's officially time to stop saying that. It's the 6th, the 15th, the first month in January, and hopefully by sometime by next week, maybe we'll find out who the new head coach of our beloved Buffalo Bills is, and we'll have fun. We'll enjoy talking about it, and we'll see what transpires over the next few days. I know we're all checking our Twitters. We're all looking everywhere we possibly can to see what's potentially materializing as the days pass. So you guys have a good week. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun going through this. I'm not gonna lie. We all wanted the so-called, a lot of buzzwords I've tried to erase from my vocabulary, like culture and culture change and the continuity. Those are, please keep them, save them. They've done them nothing, right? Really, they've done them nothing. The most empty, fake, false 9-7 ever. All right, Bills fans, you have a good one. Take care. Can't wait to hear your feedback, your opinions and thoughts.